Miss Thorne looked at me and frowned. I would really like to actually examine that thing, if it would be all right with you. May I? She glanced at me, her hand again outstretched. I thought for a moment, what could possibly happen? Was I being completely unreasonable with this whole protective stance? I tried to feel one way or the other, but I was getting nothing from my cosmic consciousness. I was going to have to decide fast. I knew I was giving the impression of being stupid and reluctant. I guess, just please be careful. It's not like I can replace it or anything. Sure, of course. Why don't we go over to my desk here? We'll have more space. I followed her around the room to a different workstation. This one set up like a built-in desk, a large counter surface balanced on several drawer towers, 2 backless wheeled stools tucked underneath the counter. Several large computer monitors were arrayed at arm's length from the edge of pads of paper and pens pushed to the outer perimeters. Miss Thorne pulled out one of the stools and waved me to the second. I pulled the stool out and sat down awkwardly. I couldn't remember ever sitting on one of these before. Kept feeling like there should be a back or arms or something. Placing the lens on the countertop, I lifted the lid off the case and slid the bag, case and all, towards Miss Thorne. If you hold it over the case, I'd feel much better, I offered hesitantly. Can do, thanks, she replied, pulling the bag towards her. I watched her holding my breath as she lifted the lens. She held it gently and turned it in different directions, looking through both ends, carefully removing and replacing the glass slides, then placing it back in the case and sliding the bag back to me. The entire examination took maybe 5 minutes. Wordlessly, I pulled the bag to me with another silent exhale. Miss Thorne reached out and moved the computer mouse to wake the monitor up from its snooze mode. Quickly typing in a series of keystrokes, the picture on the monitor changed from the desktop to a file directory. She clicked on several in rapid succession, finally pulling open a screen that was entirely black with a long, narrow picture in the center. We were looking at the interior of the lens. So this is what kind of material again? She asked, pointing to the front of the lens. That's black tourmaline, I said, relieved that I could provide some actual information. It's called a thripiece for your third eye. And there's a rock crystal there? She pointed to the monitor where a smaller, bright white object nestled inside the gray-white image on the screen. It's clear quartz crystal, like what you use for quartz watches and clocks. Interesting. And the specimen slides are these glass slides that pull out here? Yep, that's where the sample material goes to be viewed. My voice cracked on the last syllable. I was heading into unfamiliar territory here. She glanced at me. Like blood? Tissue? What kind of sample material are we talking about? I guess so. Like you look at anything under a microscope, just a different kinds of lens, I guess you could say. At least it sounded good to me. She nodded, frowning at the monitor again. And this lens here in the middle, what does that do? I honestly don't know. I'm not sure how the lens works, really. I was given some basic information, but not a lot of specific detail. I can tell you the strength of the lenses. Would that help? If you know those values, that would be great. We'll need to verify the information, of course. How would you figure out the lens strength without taking it apart? It was her turn to consider for a moment. Finally, she smiled and lifted a shoulder. Good question. I'm not sure. We could probably visually confirm that exterior lens, and she tapped the monitor on that part of the image without taking the whole thing apart. But I don't know how to measure that interior lens. We both sat silently staring at the monitor. From what I understand, the interior lens is 3.5 times strength, and the one at the end is an 8 times strength lens. I hoped that information would satisfy her for the time being, at least. Her eyebrows raised and lowered. What are the overall dimensions again? I quickly reviewed in my head, then said aloud, a 1/2 inch thripiece, 1 inch crystal, 2 inch glass slides, 3.5 time interior lens, 8 time exterior lens. Overall length, 13 inches. I said in one breath. 0.5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, she repeated. Interesting. I looked at her, wondering what she was thinking. The numbers had been interesting, but still meant nothing really to me. Well, all right then. How about we see what kind of wood we're looking at here? Confirm the composition of the various parts, shall we? She smiled brightly at me. What exactly is involved in all that? Miss Thorne laughed a little and said, no worries. Just let me get our nurse. A nurse? Why do we need a nurse? She laughed aloud this time. No, NIRS is near infrared spectroscopy. She corrected me, pulling out a drawer to her right and removing some kind of handheld device. Looks like a game controller or something, I said, leaning a little away from Miss Thorne. She shook her head and laughed again. A little like, yeah, I can see that. And it works very much the same way. See, here's the scanner face. You point it at whatever you're scanning and pull the trigger here, and it sends out infrared rays, which bounce back and are read by the scanner. Easy. She grinned at me. Just put your lens on the counter here. Won't take but a second. I removed the lens from its case and set it on the counter between us, watching Miss Thorne closely. She plugged the scanning device into a port on her hard drive tower, watched as a window opened up on the monitor, then pointed the scanner carefully at the lens. Starting at the thigh piece, she scanned along the length of the lens, releasing and squeezing the trigger as she went. Okay, that's it. All set. I picked up the lens and put it back in the case, then lifted the lid and glanced at Miss Thorne. We all done here? Sure, I guess. I think this is all I can do without ripping it apart. Yeah, we're definitely not doing that, I answered wryly, placing the lid firmly on the case. I stood up slowly and arched my back as I placed the box back in the shopping bag. How do you sit on these things? Another laugh as she put the scanner away. Then she clicked a few more windows and icons until she had locked the monitor. Pushing herself away from the keyboard, Miss Thorne slid her stool aside and stood up in one smooth motion. Normally, I don't sit here longer than a minute or two at a time. I'm too busy running around trying to keep a lid on everything here. Sounds pretty quiet today, I ventured. Ah, that's the chief's doing. He knew you were coming in today and told everyone to stay out of here until we were through. Nice, I said. Not sure I'm worth all the trouble. Well, we appreciate you taking the time and trouble to come in and all. And if that thing can help stop the sicko who's out there doing this, it's worth the trouble, isn't it? Yeah, definitely, I answered, nodding my head emphatically. I held the bag firmly in my hand and stepped towards the door. Can you help me find my way out of here, please? Her laugh was genuine. It is a bit of a maze, isn't it? Come on, let's get you out of here. Relieved, I followed her through the innumerable twists and turns until finally I recognized the lobby and the main entry doors. Just go through the side door there, she said, pointing to the right of the guard station. The metal detectors are just for people coming in, not going out. Awesome. Thanks again. Have a great day. I made my way to the single exit door and burst into the glorious sunshine and freedom. I was starving. Glancing at my phone, I saw it was almost 1 o'clock. I figured I'd earned a fast food lunch, and after all of that, so I headed to the McDonald's closest to my house for a filet-o-fish sandwich meal with extra large fries and a root beer. Maybe even 2 sandwiches.